Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take information you send us, unpack it, and pull out the really crucial insights fast.
Kind of like an express lane to getting up to speed.
Exactly. And this time, we're digging into a weekly report a listener sent over. It covers the crypto market from April 21st to April 27th, 2025.
Right. So we're talking price changes for the big coins, who the top movers were, and the key news shaping things.
Our mission here is pretty simple. Give you a clear, concise overview of that week in crypto. You'll get the main points without getting lost in, all the noise.
Yep. If you want the quick version of what went down in crypto that week, this is it.
Okay, let's dive in. The report kicks off by calling the week a, quote, dynamic blend of recovery and volatility. What's behind that description?
Well, it seems like there was a general upward trend, a recovery phase, but it wasn't exactly smooth sailing. There were definite price swings.
So, volatility mixed with optimism. What drove the positive side?
The report points to two main things: signs of easing trade tensions, specifically U.S.-China, and continued interest from big institutional investors putting money into the space.
Gotcha. Okay, let's focus on Bitcoin first, the leader of the pack. How did it fare during that week?
Bitcoin had a pretty solid week. It started things off around $87,000.
Okay.
And it climbed quite a bit, peaking over 94,600.
Wow, quite a range. Where did it end up, roughly?
Likely settled around the $93,000 mark by the end of the week. So that's roughly a 6.9% gain. Let's call it nearly 7%.
Nearly 7% for Bitcoin in a single week is definitely noteworthy. What were the key things pushing that price up?
Well, a few factors seem to align. First, that trade tension news. President Trump mentioned tariffs potentially being substantially below 145%.
So a softening stance there.
Yeah.
That usually helps risk assets, right?
Exactly. It seemed to boost general market confidence, and Bitcoin benefited. But maybe even bigger was the news around Bitcoin ETFs.
The exchange traded funds. What happened there?
Record inflows. On one day, April 22nd, they pulled in over $936 million.
$936 million.
Yeah.
In one day.
Yep. The biggest daily inflow they'd seen since back in January. It really signals that institutional demand is still strong, maybe even growing.
That's a significant signal. Now, here's something else interesting the report mentions. Bitcoin seemed to be doing its own thing, separate from the stock market, and even outperforming gold.
That's right. And this is key. It reinforces that whole digital gold or safe haven narrative.
How so?
Well, you had some turbulence in traditional stocks, but Bitcoin wasn't just holding steady. It was actually climbing and doing better than gold, the classic safe haven.
So more investors might be starting to see it as a place to park money, independent of other markets.
That's certainly the argument being made, and this week's action seemed to support it. It suggests a growing perception of Bitcoin as a unique store of value.
Okay, let's shift gears to Ethereum. Looks like ETH actually had an even bigger week, percentage-wise.
It did indeed. A really strong performance. Ethereum started around $1,500.
And finished where?
By week's end, it was likely around $1,805. That's roughly a 20% jump.
20%. Okay, what was lighting the fire under Ethereum?
It seems like a combination of factors. Part of it was just the broader good mood in the altcoin market, likely linked to that same trade optimism we talked about. DOGE, SOL, they were up too.
So a rising tide lifting mini boats.
Sort of, yeah. But also, there seemed to be renewed institutional focus specifically on Ethereum.
Why now?
Possibly due to its ongoing dominance in DeFi, decentralized finance, and maybe excitement around planned upgrades. Vitalik Buterin's roadmap for Layer 1 privacy and scalability keeps getting attention.
Right, the tech developments.
Yeah, plus strong trading volume. It hit nearly $45 billion midweek, and the price held firmly above that $1,500 support level. All positive signs.
Now, the report really highlights Solana. It sounds like SOL was the star performer that week.
Oh, absolutely. Solana had a phenomenal week. It started at $115. It jumped strongly, hitting $145 by the 22nd, even briefly crossing $150 later in the week.
And where did it settle?
Likely around the $144 mark by the close. That's a gain of about 25%, just huge.
25%. What was driving that massive surge for Solana?
A lot of it came down to its ecosystem. The decentralized apps, or dApps, built on Solana were reportedly doing really well, generating something like $2.8 billion in revenue.
$2.8 billion. That's impressive.
It really is. And then you had the whole meme coin phenomenon happening on Solana.
Yes, the report mentioned Fartcoin. Seriously.
Seriously. It apparently surged like 21% in a single day. That kind of hype, even if speculative, draws attention to the network.
I guess any publicity is good publicity sometimes, even Fartcoin.
Well, maybe. But beyond the meme coins, there were more fundamental things too. Canada launched its first Solana ETF.
Making it easier for Canadian investors to get exposure.
Exactly. And Coinbase made some upgrades that improved Solana's integration or appeal on their platform. Plus, you had analysts putting out some pretty bullish price targets, like $400 or $500 by year end.
So a mix of ecosystem growth, hype, better access, and positive predictions. And breaking $150 must have felt like a big psychological win.
Definitely. Breaching a key resistance level like that signals strong upward momentum to traders.
Okay, so beyond the big three, BTC, ETH, SOL, were there other notable movers that week? Any other coins making waves?
Yeah, the report flagged a few. Solaxy, ticker SOLX, apparently soared 50 to 60%.
50 to 60. Wow. Why?
It had a successful Layer 2 presale, raising around $29 million. Layer 2s are solutions built on top of a blockchain like Solana to make it faster and cheaper. Plus, it was offering a really high staking yield, like 137% APY.
137% APY. That'll get attention.
For sure. It positioned itself as a key player in Solana's growing Layer 2 scene. We already mentioned Fartcoin's big daily jump, probably ending the week up 15–20%.
Anyone else?
SUI, S-U-I, gained about 11% on one day, the 22nd, likely finishing the week up maybe 8–10%, again, riding that general altcoin wave and interest in DeFi.
Okay.
And Immutable, IMX, it was up around 16% on the 22nd, maybe 10–12% for the whole week. That seemed tied to buzz around gaming tokens, and it managed to climb back into the top 100 cryptos by market cap.
Interesting. And Dogecoin.
DOGE saw some gains, yeah. Climbed about 9% to around 17 cents by the 22nd, maybe 7–9% for the week, but definitely lagged behind the performance of Solana and Ethereum.
So it sounds like activity within the Solana ecosystem was particularly strong, with Solaxy and the meme coins really standing out.
Absolutely. It was clearly a focal point of market activity and speculation that week.
The report also lists the top 10 crypto news stories. Let's quickly run through some key ones and see how they tie into the price action we've discussed.
Sounds good. Number one, as we touched on, was Trump's softer tariff talk. That seemed to be the main trigger for the broad market rally. BTC, ETH, SOL, the whole CoinDesk 20 index moved up on that.
Makes sense. And Solana's ecosystem strength was a big story itself.
Definitely. That $2.8 billion revenue number, the meme coin hype like Fartcoin, the Canadian ETF, the Coinbase upgrades, it all fed into that 25% weekly gain for SOL and made headlines.
Then the Bitcoin ETF inflows that record $936 million day. That directly fueled BTC's push towards $94,000.
Precisely. A clear sign of institutional buying pressure and confidence.
And Ethereum's 20% rebound was also a top story, driven by that mix of altcoin momentum, Vitalik's roadmap, and DeFi interest.
Correct. Then you have the Solaxy presale making news. Raising $29 million for a Layer 2 project on Solana highlighted the investment flowing into scaling solutions on that network. They were even touting high transaction speed targets.
Interesting. What else? There was something about real estate.
Ah, right. A report predicting real estate tokenization could become a huge market, maybe $4 trillion by 2035. More of a long-term sentiment booster for blockchain platforms, not an immediate price driver for that week.
Okay. Any regulatory news?
Yeah, the Bank for International Settlements, the BIS, put out a report warning about crypto potentially causing financial instability. That sparked some debate, as you'd expect. CoinFund's president pushed back, highlighting the tension between crypto and traditional finance.
Did that BIS report impact prices much?
Doesn't seem like it had a major immediate effect, but regulatory talk is always simmering in the background.
Got it. What else made the top 10?
The meme coin surge, particularly on Solana with Fartcoin, BONK, DUOF, was noted. Also mentioned gains for SHEB and PPE on Ethereum, showing that speculative interest wasn't just on Solana.
And the gains for Dogecoin and SUI were highlighted.
Yeah, showing that even outside the absolute top performers like SOL and ETH, there was strength in other altcoins. Immutable's rise was mentioned there too.
And finally,
Senator Loomis criticized the Federal Reserve's approach to crypto. This sort of supports the pro-crypto, anti-establishment narrative, maybe bolstering Bitcoin's safe haven appeal slightly, but likely had minimal direct price impact that week.
so putting it all together, that week looks like a fascinating mix. You had big macro factors like trade policy calming nerves,
Right, and huge institutional flows coming into Bitcoin ETFs.
combined with really specific, strong developments within certain ecosystems, especially Solana.
Exactly. It shows how crypto markets react to both the big picture and the nitty-gritty blockchain level stuff.
So for you listening, the key takeaway, it was a week of strong recovery. particularly for Solana and its associated tokens, fueled by both global events and specific blockchain progress.
Yeah, Bitcoin showed resilience and growing institutional backing, while Ethereum also posted really solid gains.
Looking forward, the report suggests keeping an eye on trade developments and any regulatory news. Those seem like key factors for the next phase.
And Solana's momentum, whether it can be sustained, is definitely a major point to watch.
Which leads to a final thought for you to ponder. What does the rapid growth we saw in an ecosystem like Solana mean for competition in the crypto space down the line?
Good question. What kind of new apps or innovations might pop up on these fast-growing networks, and could they challenge the current leaders?
Something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.